for doing the work on behalf of Squamish. I really want to commend each of you for the amount of dedication you've done for our children, Queechalok yesterday, today, especially for our future unborn generations. The work that you do is paramount, and you know it's really important that we blanket you the way Squamish takes care of it. I really want to remind my family, if we're going to follow Squamish protocols, there needs to be kerchiefs on their heads. We're only doing halfway work. It's going to have spiritual consequences to the ones you're standing up. Why are you doing it halfway? I'm being very intentional. We are very deliberate and intentional people. Our protocols are long. And for your protection, we want to make sure we take care of you properly. A Semco is to take care of your spirit. Your West Ainuch in Squamish means our spirit. Because the work that you do has been so impactful for our children. This the long-term reform for our children, we're dating back to 91. Since 91, our children have been mistreated provincially, federally, and again, our good friend Cindy Blackstock. She used to work for us at IS Munman, just down the road. IS Munman is a Squamish term that means peace to our children. And you know, the most important thing that you're doing as the National Chiefs Committee is making sure that we're going to implement these protocols for our children. Again, as someone who has children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, it's really important that we set up those safety protocols for our children. Because base compensation is $40,000. Are we setting up our children for failure without those financial supports in place? And the technical team and all of you that have been working so diligently to make sure that this comes to fruition is so amazing, so amazing. And we see each of you at all the previous Assembly of First Nations Special Chiefs Assembly on how we can deliver this reform equally across the country, not just in one region. And you know, it's really amazing to see the strength that each of you carry. That strength is going to be what's going to make this a successful implementation of this reform. Again, you have matriarchs here, you have chiefs here, you have elders here, and you have really good istituat, really smart people. Our technical team, you know, it's going to be an amazing event. You know, we're going to be able to provide some really amazing financial and economic supports to our children who were removed from their families. The challenge today is we still see it. We're still the highest amount of Indigenous children are apprehended at an alarming rate. We've seen the statistics. Nunavut, 100%. 100% of their children are apprehended, taken right out of the hospital. So how can we change this narrative in our lifetime? Our children should never be removed from their parents, their grandparents. I was fortunate enough, I grew up with my mom until my mom passed away. I was 7. Being a residential school survivor, ended up living with my grandparents, grateful for my grandparents. And you know, after our grandparents passed away, it was the generosity of Squamish that took care of us Gonzales orphans. Maisie, Alvin, Mildred and Norman, Moses and Sarah, Harold and Harriet and Haney. These were the families that fed us Gonzales orphans, because we were orphans. We didn't have anyone to take care of us. And it was my late brother that stood in our front living room with a shotgun because the police wanted to take us. 1968, the police wanted to take us, and our brother was standing in our front living room with a shotgun. didn't want the RCMP to take us because the RCMP were very instrumental in removing our children. So, you know, that's the history. That's the history of one of hundreds of thousands of children that were apprehended. And the work that you've done is going to be so rewarding for our children. Again, my concern is we need those supports in place. You know, the implementation is going to be vast. You're going to have hundreds of thousands of children that will be applying for compensation. But how are we going to support those children? How are we going to give them the financial stability so they can be successful? As an Indian Day School residential school survivor, I didn't have those financial supports. My residential school money, I went crazy. I bought a car, bought a truck, and went crazy in the casino. My Indian Day School money is sitting in my bank because I learned from my residential school experience. So are we setting our children up for the failure that I went through with my residential school compensation? I hope we're going to have those supports in place because it's so important. Because we see the challenges, particularly in the downtown east side here. We see the challenges of Indigenous homelessness. 72% of the people that are on the streets in the city of Vancouver are Indigenous. 72%, and they're either residential school survivors, Indian Day School survivors, 60 school survivors, or they're the children of those survivors. These are coping mechanisms that were taught down through the generations. My generation, my parents' generation, my grandparents' generation. So again, the work that you're doing is so amazing, and you should be so proud. The amount of hours that you dedicated for the future of our children is going to be amazing. And Creator's going to give you all the blessings because you're dedicating and sacrificing a lot of your own personal time. With that, I'm going to say thank you. I hope they get some purchase on them because we want to take care of them Squamish. With that, I say positive. Oh, you can clap. Okay, host. Learning from his elders. His ears are red.
First of all, I want to acknowledge the people of Squamish. Thank you for this wonderful ceremony to recognize the National Children's Chiefs Commission. You're a product, I would say, of the wishes of the chiefs, and the resolution 1661 to realize that right now what is in existence with the child welfare system is discrimination. And it is quite unfair in terms of what we witnessed over the last several years in terms of negotiation. And it's really important with Sempúlyan's words that not only the work that you're going to do, but the responsibility to each and every region, that discrimination still exists in its current form. And I think we got to remind ourselves that we wouldn't be here if this government didn't discriminate against us. Discrimination happened. And what we're trying to undo is really a racist system that pinpointed our children on the dirt. What we need to do is create that space for our governance, for our jurisdiction to take it over and make sure that discrimination doesn't happen again. And that's a responsibility that you have as not only representatives of the NCCC, but as technical people. And that's the expectation as well. So as we move forward, as hope that, well, I don't want to hope anymore. I think we should demand that Canada comes back to the table and starts negotiating in good faith with every region, not just Ontario, with all due respect. I get it. Ontario intervened and they had their wishes. But what about us here in British Columbia? What about Northwest Territories? What about Alberta, Manitoba? What about our children? The risk is that discrimination is still happening. And to follow the many Canadian Human Rights Tribunal, what Canada isn't doing, they're not living up to what the court has said, the Supreme Court of Canada. And with the Assembly of First Nations and the Child Family Caring Society, that decision is still there. And that's the work that we need to do. And I really appreciate all of you coming from far and wide across Canada to here today over the next couple of days to try to revive the table, start negotiations again. Because in the end, we need an agreement that makes sure that we don't discriminate against our own children. That we don't be the perpetrators that what Canada did to our children. And certainly with our partners here, Cindy Blackstock, that has always been an advocate for many, many years. The fight for Jordan, you know, we can't lose sight of what this is about. I mean, from coast to coast to coast, many First Nations peoples, many of our Indigenous peoples talk about how to take care of a child. That the child is always in the center. And we take care of the child. And I thank Sempúlyan too, that what you really intimately shared with your life. You know, I always think about what about my life. I'm very lucky. I was very fortunate that I had two parents, that I didn't go to residential school. My older brother and sister did. That perhaps they were feeling the results of the residential school system. That perhaps maybe in their families, my brothers and sisters, the issues that they dealt with really had an effect on their children, my nieces, my nephews. And I always go back to my nephew of why it's so worth it that family intervenes, that our people take care of our own, that our family take care of our own, that we need to take over jurisdiction over child welfare. Is that my nephew, who was caught in the system in Ontario. Thank God my mother intervened. Thank God my mother got custody of my nephew and brought him home back to where we grew up. You know, taking care of our own was very important because where we saw Nathan, his name is Nathan, he became very successful. He graduated top of the school in Prince George Secondary School. He went to University of Toronto, went to UNBC doctorate, became a medical doctor, became a dermatologist. Now he's in West Bank, printing his own money. No, I'm just kidding. You know, what saddens me, I'm so happy for him, is that how many Nathans, how many potential children that could have been the Nathans of the world, that could have lived up to their full potential, that could have, and how many of them are gone because of the welfare of the child foster care system. That's what I think about. How many children have been lost because of a failed system, because of a colonial racist system? I know I'm really unloading in terms of, you know, the responsibilities that you have, but I think there's a real expectation that
what an honor to be back in the Squamish Nation. It feels like I'm coming back to the family who taught me very quickly and gave me a chance to go out and see if I and the company of others could make a difference. I am forever grateful. And I stand here with what for me is always the biggest reminder, and this is Jordan River Anderson's baby. It was gifted to me to hold in trust by the family. And as you can see, there are bears on each of the corners, and that's why the bear represented family, something that was very important to Jordan, something where he was part of a family that loved and cared and supported him, and around him, the greater family of his nation. And maybe his little spirit knew it before us, but that family would grow to be children all over the country and in fact all over the world, who would start to understand that it was a child spirit that was necessary to wake up a movement of change. The night Jordan's principal passed in the House of Commons, his father was there, and he was overlooking the parliamentarians as they did a standing vote one by one by one. And despite all the parties, they all voted in unison for Jordan's principal. And his dad looked over the bar as they stood in a standing ovation for he and his family and the other families who were being left behind because of government jurisdictional disputes. And he said one thing. He said, "Do not let the good being done in my son's name today just be a moral victory." And so this reminds me of who we work for. How we have to bring our best selves even when we don't feel like we can. How we have to ask more of ourselves even when we think we've given everything. Because I think that's the sacredness of children, is that they make us laugh more than we ever thought we could. They make us think more than we ever thought we could. They make us love more than we ever knew was possible. And they make us a lot more courageous too. And I think that's why I'm so honored to be here tonight. I want to thank the Salem, because you were able to stand up in the assembly and allow the chiefs to stand together for their children. At a time when people started to wonder, well, is it about who gets the money? Sometimes the money can blind what it's really about, which is how do we give the very best care to our children? Because it's not the adults' money at all. Never was. It's their money. It's for them, and it's for all the generations of children to come. But somehow we all got lost a bit, I think. And you were able to stand up in such a dignified, thoughtful, considerate way, as I have seen so often among your people, and bring us back to the children. And to all the chiefs who created this commission, that's what they had on their mind. And I am so honored to sit here with Regional Chief Terry T.G., because there's been some distance in the relationship between the Caring Society and AFN2. And this moment is a chance for us, for children like Jordan, to be proud of us again. That we're all working together to really achieve what the children deserve, which is adults who love them, who are focused on them, and that are always going to bring their best no matter how hard the day is. Because at the end of the day, we all have responsible, big positions, but the most important role of any adult is to fall in love with a child. And so, to the family's permission, I'd like to pass this to the commissioners. Because I think it's important that you feel the spirit of this beautiful little boy, and that we always remember and honor him. And so, I'll begin with Chief Jacko, and just pass it on. Honor Jordan Rivers. And with that, I just really want to thank the nation again, and thank that beautiful child for being here, and reminding us all what it's all about.